I see people are in here already, which is amazing. You are welcome to stay on audio only, but also welcome to be on video. So I'm not the only one here. We're just going to give it a few minutes for people to get in here. All right. Hey, Adam, how are you? Joanne, I see you're here.
Hi,
Hey, how are you?
lovely to see you.
It has
I
been way
just
too
clicked on
long.
this.
This is great. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's nice. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure
Of course.
to attend and to experience the inspiration.
Thank you for taking some time to join. I know everyone is very busy, but these conversations, I'm excited for these conversations. I feel like it's very meaningful to hear what everyone has to say, not just our speakers. I see more people are joining, so welcome, welcome. We're going to give it a few minutes. I want to give it 3 or 4 minutes just so we can get people in here. Feel free to turn your videos on if you would like to. You don't have to, but this is definitely a better opportunity to do that and participate than in the cadence like where we're doing the other sessions. So feel free to join. In the meantime, just check in that there's no emergencies. Who else is here? Michelle Martin is here. Hello, Anne. Hi, how are you? Anne's been helping everything on the production side, so she's probably tired and hungry. All right, look here. People are coming in. George. Oh, he doesn't hear me yet. Who else is here? Feel free to say hi. Definitely meant to be interactive, so you don't have to be on video, but who's here? Introduce yourselves.
Hey, it's Jamie Smith.
Hey, how are
Hi, good
you?
to see you. Long time to see.
I know, nice to connect. I like the face to face, I mean, I
Yeah.
usually don't like to be on video, so I totally get people who prefer not to, but
Right.
especially today, it's nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Great job. Kudos to you and the team.
Thank you, thank you. It's all the team for sure. Who else is here? I know more people are coming in, but George, I see you are here. Adrian is here.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing well, feeling hungry, trying to order my lunch.
That time of day. Joanne, wonderful to see you here. I love that Adam and George, at least off the top of my head, from the New York area at this global event. We have people from all over the world, but then there's just some people that are not even that far that I never get to see, especially in the last year and a half. All right, Cindy,
And
thank you so much for joining us. Bill, welcome.
in the meantime, like we're so close, but now all I can do is follow your culinary journeys on Instagram.
I know, and you're traveling. You travel to like the best places, Adam. You should, can you introduce yourself and just tell everyone a little bit about you?
Sure. I am an immersive event designer. So kind of by combining my like ability to create immersive environments, I combine adventure theory and scripting and just like people entering into a fantasy world. But really, it's like a brand event. People don't even realize that they're in a brand experience. I like to say that I remind brands on how people can have fun.
That's very true. You should really all check out his work. He does really awesome stuff. Adrian, thanks for joining. How are you?
I'm good, Liz. It's so great to see you. It's been, I don't know how long, far too long.
It has been
Hi.
far too long. Yes. I know you're leading our next session where I'm going to be in your session, and there are
Super.
similar topics actually. Really, just I
Mhm.
think the goal of today, and more people will join, but just to kind of kick it off for all of you who are still here, the goal of today is really to think about, for this particular session, is to think about returning to in-person events as a challenge. And I would imagine that we all agree that to some extent it is a challenge. And so I thought it would be good to just kind of kick off with, the thought of returning to in-person events. Maybe some of you have already done it. Maybe for some of you, it's just a completely stressful idea and you haven't done it yet and you don't even want to think about it. I know Jennifer and I work together on a lot of virtual events. And the two of us are kind of like, it could stay virtual for a really long time as far as I'm concerned. I really enjoy virtual events, and I'm very, very nervous personally about bringing back the in-person. So I think we should just talk for a few minutes about the challenge that we see as it relates to returning to in-person, and then share some ideas around how we could meet those challenges. We do have, just to be clear, this is being recorded, although we have not committed to sharing it. So if in the discussion we decide this is personal stuff and we really don't want to share it, the only thing that would be shared are any notes that we take, just, text notes, which won't be attributed to individuals. Or we might decide this was the best industry conversation I've had in a long time. We need to share this. And so we'll have you guys just give us like a thumbs up towards the end or a thumbs down, and we'll make a decision. We also can clip this, so we could pull like 2-minute bites, if that makes sense. So I just want to be clear, because I know you all get that recording notification in the beginning. We're not going to go publishing your thoughts anywhere without your permission. But let's just talk about the challenge. What brought you to this room? And when you think about the idea of returning to in-person events, how do you feel about it? Is it exciting, scary, somewhere in between? And anyone can jump in. I don't want to call on people. I feel bad.
Should I start?
Sure.
I think that it's going to be a little difficult, right? Because now there's a New York mandate that people have to be vaccinated. So there might have to be some very uncomfortable conversations, like where one with guests attending an event, if they don't have their vaccine card, or if they're not vaccinated, but you do require vaccination at your event, you would have to be okay with turning away the guests. The same thing with your staff, right? Like you'd have to be okay with like unhiring people, and double checking so that when people get to the first day of work, that they do have their vaccine cards and that it's valid. And if that's what you decide, I mean, it is a thing, but you'd have to be okay with having uncomfortable conversations. It's going to be. I think expecting it would make it a little bit more easy.
And you're someone who like thrives off the in-person space, because you, as you kind of introduced yourself briefly, and obviously I know you a little bit more, you build these amazing immersive experiences for people that I would imagine is a lot different in the virtual space. But it's good to know that you're questioning some of these things and that you have these challenges as you look to get back to in-person. Are you doing anything in person now?
No, just working on Halloween, working on something for Halloween. I'm not sure how big it'll be.
Nice.
But
okay.
that's also something where people can choose to arrive, show up or not show up. I think there will be decreased attendance in-person events.
So I know we have a bunch of people like just jumping in. We're just talking at this point about the challenge of returning to events. How do you guys feel about it? And what are some of the challenges you're concerned about? And then, we'll spend some of our time towards the end talking about how we address that. But I think it's good to just get it off our chest. We probably all have the same or similar concerns. And anyone can jump in.
If I may, my name is Joanne. I'm with the National Golf Course Owners Association of Canada, and we hosted an event. Actually, it was a golf tournament last week, and so we had to, each guest that were coming, each member of our association had to prove their vaccination. So they had to have a proof of their vaccination. So I would scan each one of them. They had to have their 2 doses. I was afraid that, maybe I had to turn someone away, but thankfully I didn't have to, which was great. So it worked really well. But I find that because of that, people kind of think that, okay, I've got my 2 vaccinations. That means that, I can socialize. I don't have to be a meter away from one another. So it's like all their barriers are, go down. And they do things like they entered into the club, which they should wear a mask. Some of them did not wear the masks. So, and as soon as alcohol is in the picture, or they start drinking, I find that they kind of lose all the things that they need to do. So it's kind of difficult to bring them back. And one thing that really surprised me is when I went in the kitchen, because I needed to speak to the caterer, and then I saw all the staff, the catering staff, that did not wear a mask. They were shoulder to shoulder in the kitchen. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what if any of those staff members, because I didn't scan them, obviously, for their vaccination, what if someone has COVID and they are spreading the disease to my guests? So all these things kind of, were in my mind, and hopefully nothing happened. But anyhow, it's just, and then we had a musician I was playing, and then everybody, started to dance. We're not supposed to dance. So it was really difficult to control.
I want to just jump in here and say, Joanna's described behavior that we've seen that is common when people have held in-person events in the last, since the pandemic started. And I'm going to be covering a lot of this stuff in probably more detail, but also sort of from a bigger picture viewpoint in my roundtable later today. And I do have clients, I mean, as you asked, Liz, outside the United States who are thinking about in-person events. I mean, because we have, maybe everyone here is from the US, or I'm not sure how many, I know quite a number of you, but the situation outside the US is different. I mean, Sarah Shui, who is here today, is in Taiwan. There are no cases in Taiwan at all right now. So, I mean, you do have to think about the big picture, and we also have to, and probably most people here are thinking about US events here, and it's a complicated situation. But luckily, we have quite a lot of good information about the risks that are involved. But there's some much wider issues besides the ones that Joanne has described at her specific event that really need to be considered. And the central issue, I think, for meeting planners, for all of us who are working with meetings right now, is these go, no go decisions. Should I have this event in December, in February, in March, and so on. We're working on these things all the time. And there are some really difficult things that can happen that are not under our control, which we need to be aware of in terms of making good decisions about those events, quite apart from what we require from attendees and staff. And staff are often underlooked situation here. In fact, I just saw a quote that basically said it's just about impossible to ensure that all staff at an event are vaccinated in the US right now. I mean, that's just not generally feasible unless the meeting is really small. So that's a real consideration. But again, I don't want to take up too much time, but it's a complicated topic. But the risk assessment for COVID and transmission and the duty of care that we have when we hold events, I think is something that's very, very important. I think is very important, and we need to make the decisions from the best information that we have, which is constantly changing.
All right, so I'll add a little bit of fuel to the fire too.
Sure.
Basically, one of the challenges we have is event planners, when we make those changes, there's a trickle-down effect to the supplier community, whether it's the hotels, the convention centers, the AV companies, the DNCs, the decorators who set up the exhibit hall. So, I mean, it's very unfortunate, but what may end up happening is if we keep canceling meetings, they may stop hiring people. And we already know it's tough to get suppliers. I mean, we're dealing with people that have never done this stuff before, because the hotels, like they can't find people that have experience now. So that just adds more fuel to the fire. It's just awkward. Very strange times.
That's an understatement for sure. I know that we started a few minutes early because there were some people in here and people are joining as we are talking. So we're going to keep the people coming in, and I'll just kind of keep routing the conversation back. George, I'm going to come to you right next. I think you guys are welcome to use the raise hand function or jump in when you can, but we're essentially talking about the challenge that we face as event organizers trying to bring back in-person events. I wanted to spend the first few minutes laying out what is the challenge, what are our fears, what are the things we are concerned about, and we're taking notes. This is being recorded, but will not be shared publicly unless you all decide that it's comfortable doing that after we've had this conversation. But want to give anyone the chance to be on video or audio only, and just give us a sense of what you see the challenges are. We are taking notes, and then we'll kind of get to how do we address this? What are some of the things we're doing? George, I think you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah. As a third party consultant, one of the issues is like just trying to wrangle all the expectations from your different stakeholders, right? And I think one of the things that really frustrates me is seeing people respond to what the other policies and other events that they've seen out there. And as a person, there's something like complying with policy versus effectiveness are two different things. So for example, having people fill out forms 2 days in advance saying that they tested COVID-free within the last 3 days doesn't mean anything if they went to an event just before this one. Or, you know, if they're vaccinated like as of like 5 days ago, it doesn't work that way. So it's really frustrating to try to wrangle all the C-suites, everyone else who's used to seeing, well, this is what the concerts are doing, and trying to apply it to their own conferences. And it's just that, it's just a sticking point for me. It's something that frustrates me a lot. I've been trying to alert some of my clients, like, you know, you can get like CO2 detectors and like put them in to make sure there's proper airflow, you know, like there's all these other things you can do beyond what you're seeing out there. But some people just kind of want to stick to the minimum, and that's frustrating right now.
Adrian just put a great resource in the chat, so feel free to check that out. You guys can use the chat or come on video or audio. I know one thing is that the idea of just who's making the rules, whether you're in the US or globally, who are we listening to? My sister, for example, she has 4 kids in school. 2 just were told on Monday that they were directly exposed on Thursday. Since Thursday, we've had birthday parties and everyone's been exposed to them because they didn't know. And the rule was the other 2 kids can still go to school because they're secondarily exposed, but they live in the same house and all share the same, resources. And when you just think about like how that applies to the events industry, and to George's point, what that actually looks like and means when someone gets vaccinated yesterday and now got their card, or that's something to think about. Joanne, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, just let you know, an experience that I had was that I'm on a board. So I went to a board meeting in Toronto, and when we arrived at the meeting, we had to actually do a COVID test before we entered into the meeting room. So we did the test individually. And it took about 5 minutes before we got our results, which was really quick. I was surprised, and kind of easy as well. So did that. And then after we could enter into the room, and of course we were wearing our mask, we could enter into the meeting room. We were all social distanced from one another at the boardroom, which was really, really long. And then we were all sitting down, and then our president said, you can remove your mask. So we removed our mask because everybody tested negative. We had someone that entered at the very last minute. She was late, she entered. The president asked her to come to the front and do her test. She did her test and she was positive. So just to prove that if we didn't have the testing, if we didn't implement the testing, she could have been sitting there with us all day long and we would have known. And because she had absolutely no symptom, but she was actually positive. So it's kind of scary when you look at things that way. And she had to leave immediately. And when we disinfected where she was sitting and the table and so on, and it was kind of like, oh my God, things can happen. It's scary.
Things can definitely happen. Is there anyone here who is currently doing in-person events, who has found some ways to work around this? Heidi, I see you. Sharon, you guys want to jump in and share what you're doing and what's working, what's not working? Part of it's just being on the ground.
So I actually have 4 weddings in the next 2 weeks. 3 of them, well, actually 2 of them are only allowing vaccinated people to attend. They had to go through not a app or anything, but they had to register with their vaccination information in both cases. I have another wedding with 300 people where they don't care. I'm scared. Honestly, I have to tell you, I'm really at a loss on how to handle our situation because I have in my contract, if we're not comfortable, we get to back out. I can't back out of a 300-person wedding. But she won't abide by anything. I finally got her to bring in N95 masks for everybody, but she asked that we not put a sign up and not ask anyone to wear them, just to put them out. But I can relate to what you were just mentioning. My daughter just ran a conference for a weekend, and everybody had to send their vaccination. No one could come if they weren't vaccinated. They had everyone drive and do COVID rapid tests and wait until they were cleared. They had a whole system in place, and then they could enjoy the whole weekend. And her feedback in her post edit included a full range of comments, which she was running by me, which included moms who were going back home to their young children, how incredibly wonderful it felt to be not only away from kids for the weekend, but also to know that you could come home safe. To comments with, that was outrageous that you made us go through all of that. So we can't please everybody. So that honestly is how I feel right now, because there are no rules. I'm done.
Well, hi, I work for a organization that's all about bowling. We're the national governing body for the sport of bowling. And so we're in kind of a unique predicament. I mean, we've been struggling with, we didn't have any tournaments at all in 2020. The entire season had to be canceled. And, you know, we heard from our members continually about that. Our membership tends to skew older as it is. And so I think people were especially sensitive to that, but people really miss the opportunity to bowl because that's not something you can do virtually. So we started having live events again this year, and you know, we decided people really had to make a choice. It's like, do you miss the sport enough to come with a lot of parameters, you know, and you know, we haven't required vaccinations at our events, but you know, and we have events all over the country, so we really follow local protocol. So if there's a mask mandate in the place we're having a tournament, then everybody has to be masked. But we offer guidelines and recommendations, but it's really up to each person to decide for themselves, do you miss the opportunity to participate in the sport enough to follow some parameters that have to be in place in order for this to be safe for everybody. So, you know, we've been able to have a full season so far of events, and we get feedback either way. But we had a virtual conference in April for the first time in our history, and all anybody could say was how much they were looking forward to a live in-person conference next year. So it is hard to please everybody. And ultimately people have to decide for themselves kind of what they're comfortable with. But, you know, our numbers are pretty good considering the circumstances. So, but it's a balancing act. So.
Sharon, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that we just did an event this week in New York, and the person that is the head of this group that we did the event with insisted on not having any kind of a mask mandate. So what we did get them to finally agree to is that we would use the Excelsior Pass, which is New York, and that would do that, and we would not walk up to people and say, you know, hey, you know, please put a mask on. I think our team had masks on, but I think it was the feeling that, I've been waiting so long to hug somebody and talk to somebody that I don't care, I'm vaccinated. And so we were very careful not to kind of interfere with that feeling, but at the same time too, our client Scott said, I just want to sit at the bar and have a drink with somebody and talk to them, and I don't need a mask to do that. So luckily that we haven't had any issues at all. Nobody's reported COVID or anything else. So cross fingers, we're okay.
I have to really jump in here. I think that we do have, again, a duty of care for meetings. And for us to go ahead and run a 300-person event, and again, this is nothing personal against you, Heidi, and I understand the circumstances that you're under, just as you're living, and so on, without precautions, unfortunately, does really risk a super spreader event, and people may die as a result of that. And when you said there are no rules, we can make our own rules. It's true, people will ultimately do whatever they want to do. And there's no question, I'm just as anxious to get back to actually being in person with people as possible. But again, not at the risk of my own health, and different people have different ideas about what that is. But I don't think that we should allow folks to who all of us want to go back to in-person events to say, well, I want to do this so badly that I don't really care anymore, and to create events where that is a potentially a really risky behavior, not necessarily for them, but also for people who they may come in contact with afterwards, and so on. There's very little, very few in-person events are running decent post-event contact tracing right now. So the statements that people make that, well, we had this in-person event and no one reported anything getting COVID means almost nothing. You don't know. You don't know. I mean, someone might have got back and come back and got very sick, and the last thing they want to do is have or are able to do is to let the event or organizers know that they got COVID. They have other more important things on their mind, or they have a family member who gets sick, and so on. So again, I'm really putting, and this is a really complicated issue, but I think we do have an ethical duty to do the right thing. And I'm not saying that it's not possible to run in-person events right now. I am personally very skeptical that we can safely run large in-person events right now, unless we use the highest precautionary measures, and also inform attendees accurately about the risks that they are taking by going to this event. Nothing is absolutely safe, but we can tell people what the risks are, and I think we have a duty to do that.
Yeah, it's a very important point. Samantha, you have your hand up. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, it's been very interesting to hear these perspectives. I am in Boston, where there is an indoor mask mandate, as you can tell, and that is required for our events. Prior to Boston reinstating the mask mandate, I work on the venue side as a venue planner, and we are requiring masks regardless of city protocol, at least through this semester. So I've seen the other side of it, where unless you are actively eating or drinking, we are requiring you to wear a mask. We have table tents on any table that there is advising of that. And we are actually responsible also for working with the event host to enforce the mask requirement. So if we see someone, more than like 3 minutes of not eating without a mask, they are required to go up to them and say, hey, you need to put your mask on. The other thing we're doing is a ton of pre-event communication, sending out know before you go emails, updating where we are in terms of that, so that everyone is really set up for success. I've done events up to 200 people. To the question in the chat, no, we're not getting a ton of pushback. I am at a university, so it could be the environment. We work with both external and internals. I've done both, and we really haven't gotten a lot of pushback. We did an event for the entire freshman community. Everyone wore their masks. So we're hoping it continues that way, but it is interesting to hear the perspectives of those who don't have mask mandates and seeing how in-person is returning.
Time flies. We only have a few minutes left, although I think we can definitely continue this conversation in Adrian's session, which is right after this. But anyone else have something they'd like to add? And feel free to use the chat as well, because I know we can't all, verbally have time to chat. But what else is working? Oh, Heidi, did you want to say something?
Just have a question, because it does put us as the planners, and I completely agree with the statements, in a very precarious situation. And part of me has even thought about some kind of paperwork that my client signs that I am not responsible. I have advised them on what they must do. And keep in mind, these are social events, not a corporate behind it. Corporate are still virtual. Has anyone done that aside from your own contract, which already removes my liability, but it's almost like a secondary thought that this person really doesn't care. And the other thing I have to tell you is, in the case where they don't care, their friends don't either. And neither do their family. Like, it's really difficult. That's it.
I have seen venue contracts with a certain large convention center down the south of the country that included that attendees had to sign, all suppliers had to sign. It basically said, if you attend this event, you can't sue us, your families can't sue us if you get COVID, and so on and so forth. How legal such contracts are, I don't know, and I wouldn't recommend them, but people are doing that.
Samantha has it. She wrote in the chat that she has a contract about masks. And, I think one of the biggest challenges for me thinking about going back to in-person, and granted, it is very different. I understand a wedding versus a corporate conference that I think could much more easily be held in a virtual space and have what we need. But it's like, even if you put in all the rules and all the tracking, and you decided, forget what the CDC says or the WHO or whatever, this is what I think is the standard for an in-person event, and you make everyone sign off on it, does that then change the event to the degree that it is not even fun to be in person? And so then why not just keep it virtual? So I'm excited about the idea of hybrid. I just see it taking a very long time to become like something that we're going to see thousands of people in person and thousands virtually, and our habits have changed so dramatically. Ed, you want to jump in and say something before we
check? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So there's something that I've witnessed. I'm in New Jersey, but this is in reference to New York, which, as you guys know, was for a while the epicenter of the COVID explosion. So this is not really what our industry does. I mean, a lot of us are corporate people. There's the wedding industry, but this is something that I saw in nightlife. There's a very popular dance party, and it's been running for a long time. I saw they made an adjustment recently. It's called Everyday People. That happens in New York, maybe like 2 to 3 times a month, and they gather hundreds, if not in the thousands of people for this dance party. But when it was a couple months ago, I saw that they promoted it in order to get into the party. Not only would they require vaccination proof, but also you had to have, in addition to that, you had to have a rapid test, within like the last 3 days or 4 days or something. And I was just sort of watching on their Instagram as the fans of the party were, chiming in. And I just, there's a friend of mine who goes there. I haven't been to the party recently, but there's a friend of mine who goes there pretty frequently. And I was telling her, I was like, I don't know how this is going to play out, because this is not for the nightlife industry. A lot of people are kind of like, oh, just, do whatever. And, so the vaccination requirement across New York was big enough. But, in addition to that, as for the PCR test, I thought this could be a death knell for the party. Surprisingly, I checked in with her recently, and I've been following them. They haven't slowed down at all. I mean, their fan base has been the same, and it's something people pay for. It's something that sells out pretty early. So that was just something that I would not have guessed, and it sort of took me by surprise. But I don't know if it's just a change in mentality, or if it has something to do with the relationship that they have with their own fan base of this party. But people are going to this thing weekly. They're vaccinated. They're showing up, and asked my friend about the at the door, like it sounds really cumbersome because you got to double check this and that. And she said they figured out a system that's pretty quick, so you don't really notice a lag in time in like getting in. So I don't know. I just thought that sort of like gave me hope for people being willing to sort of go with the times, and like the organizers taking a stance. It's not very popular in nightlife, honestly, to be doing what they're doing, and they didn't have to do it. They took an extra step, and they communicated very clearly why they were doing it, and they do this regularly. So anyway, that's my little anecdote of something that I'm seeing on this side of the country, and it's in our industry, but not directly sort of what we're dealing with.
Yeah, it's so interesting. These sessions honestly could be hours long. I know we have so much to share, and really it's just about collecting some insights and thoughts and getting us thinking and talking, getting an opportunity to say it out loud. I do want to end the session just so that we can get to the next one, but Adrian's session next is one of the 4 options that you guys have on the agenda, and I know he will be talking about a very similar topic. So if you want to jump in there, feel free to do that. Otherwise, would love to see you guys in the other sessions, and we'll see you back on the main stage in just a little while. Thank you for participating and being a big part of the actual conversation.